Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's Late Night Happy Hour. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky joined in a moment by Pedro Mora from The Athletic, covers the Dodgers and obviously the World Series, given everything that's going on right now. So he'll be joining us in just a second. Now, Andy, you were deep in something that is one of our favorite paths. We did this a little bit last week with Luol Deng.
Yes.
Who, as we noted, it would have been or was. I mean, he was. He didn't play, but he was. He was the fifth highest paid Laker this year.
Yes.
He had the fifth highest salary on the team.
He's behind LeBron.
Yes.
Anthony Davis.
Yes.
Danny Green.
Yes.
KCP.
That's right. Those
everybody
are the only
else.
Everybody else
made Avery Bradley,
yep.
JaVale McGee out-earned them all.
So, and I think it's one of those things where you could look at it and say that he wasn't the fifth most valuable player, but it is fun to play this game. And as much fun as it happens in basketball, baseball is even better.
Baseball is the best when it comes to just dead or deferred salary. Like, for example, the 2020 payroll, the one that the Dodgers are currently dealing with right now, they are paying one Scott Kazmir $6 million this year.
Does Scott Kazmir get his salary prorated like everyone else? Like, does his get whacked down from whatever it was for 162, or does he actually get the whole thing?
Like grandfathered in because he's no longer part
right, because he's not like there. Like, where is Scott Kazmir?
That is a really interesting question. I don't know the answer to that.
Pedro probably does, right?
He might. I don't know. I was wrong, though. I want to check myself. It's not $6 million that Scott Kazmir was getting paid this year. It's actually $8 million.
Nice.
$8 million. That signing, Dodger fans may recall, worked out rather poorly.
It did. Scott Kazmir has not played professional baseball since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
God, what a sweet deal that would be. Like, you're at home and everybody else has to take like a giant pay cut, and you're just like, I'm going to get my full $8 million here. But he made so much money, though, that might be prorated.
It probably is prorated to some degree, but one of my favorite part of that, though, is how Kazmir is being paid $8 million this season by the Dodgers. That's all part of one season he played there. He played one season with the Dodgers and managed to ravage their payroll pretty dramatically for one season. I mean, the Dodgers can afford it, but still, like, he has not been a part of this team for 4 years.
Yeah,
and he got $8 million this year.
As they once said on The Simpsons, the film did rather poorly. That will not go down in history as one of the best signings the Dodgers have ever had. So you know what July 1st is, correct?
That's Bobby Bonilla Day.
That's Bobby Bonilla Day. Do you know how long Bobby Bonilla will be paid $1.2 million every 1.19? Don't want to make it bigger than it is. Every year until what year?
I want to say like 2031, something like that.
You're close.
2035.
2035.
2035,
Pedro Mora. That is how long on every July 1st, Bobby Bonilla will be paid $1.19 million. What a spectacular deal that is.
Incredible work by the agent, yeah, absolutely. And there's another guy in baseball too. He doesn't get mentioned as much. I can't even remember who right now. Who's paid until the 2030s as well. Another player who's long been retired.
Well, we were just talking about before you came in here. Pedro Mora covers the Dodgers for The Athletic. He's been covering the team for a long time, knows them as well as anybody. One of both of our favorite things to do is especially with baseball because it's prevalent a lot, is find the dead money every year on a baseball payroll. Scott Kazmir getting a cool $8 million this year. He has not been part of the Dodgers or actually baseball for 4 years.
4 years. Wow.
He played.
Do you know this is the part we couldn't figure out? Like, is that $8 million? Like, everybody else has their salaries prorated for, the difference between 162 games and 60 games. Does he get his prorated too? Or does he get like the full amount of whatever he's owed?
That's a great question.
I just made your head explode.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that. I don't know. I did think about this earlier this year, how when some of the players that opted out were sort of, I mean, like Ian Desmond, for example, the Rockies committed $20 million a year to him. He's been a sub replacement player. When he opts out and they don't have to pay him $7 million this year, I'm sure their ownership is very happy about it, right? Like, so in some cases that the contracts changed this year in a really positive way for teams. Imagine if you owed a guy $35 million in the last year of his deal and you shaved off, 2/3 of that, without
Sweet.
really any. Yeah, it's a great outcome. So I don't know. That's worth checking in on. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it hadn't occurred to me. I want to look that up though.
I had not thought of that
I'm going to
before.
crowdsource this and see if we can figure something out. So Andy, talk while I tweet.
I had never thought of that before, but that's an interesting idea. Like the idea of the dead money, does it become prorated? Because I mean, if I'm Scott Kazmir, I'm like, yo, I had nothing to do with this. like
Been on the beach for 4 years.
Yeah,
I mean, although the salaries are, though, I mean, they can fluctuate a little bit, correct, depending on baseball's revenue.
No, I don't think so. No, that's no.
Like
in
Kazmir's case, or a deal like that, it would be pretty much standard. I mean, he's due an amount of money this year. How much did you say it was? 8? Shouldn't it be more than that, or was that a vesting, or was that not?
I don't know. That's what's fascinating. Like Andrew Jones just got off the payroll like 2 years ago.
So maybe that might be some sort of deferment, because I remember him signing a 3-year deal. Where are you getting that? Is that from Cott's contract?
From Spotric.
That's very interesting.
According to Spotric, 2020 retained salary or 2020 deferred salary.
Spotrac or
I've always said Spotrac, but this is kind of like how I spent the first 5 years thinking that it was uniformly GIF, and then other people started saying GIF, and it got really jarring to me.
When Obama said it was GIF, I decided at the time he's the president. I'm gonna listen to him.
Kazmir does not show up on COTS, which is like the most trustworthy public source, I would say.
Well, Spotric, he's got 2020 in deferred salaries.
It's certainly possible. Couldn't.
I love that stuff. I love these deep dives. Or like sometimes you'll see them on Baseball Reference too. Like if you look at the payroll and you'll be like, oh wow, they're still paying that dude. It's just fantastic stuff. I also find it very amusing because Scott Kazmir was barely with the Dodgers. It was not a fruitful year.
Well, how about this? I mean, there's 2 Dodgers that COTS does show, or Dodgers, 2 COTS does show is they're still paying until 2021 in both cases. They never played for the Dodgers, and I don't believe either of them ever played in the major leagues. They're 2 Cubans, Hector Oliveira, who they traded soon after signing, and Yaisel Sierra. Neither guy played. They're being paid together about $11 million in this year. Oh, I guess that's that $11 million before the cut.
Wow.
The kid from NYC says, we had a debate deciding the leader of the free world, and we start out with Scott Kazmir, #CamBrothers 2024.
I would vote for Scott Kazmir before the president. He's on my list of people that we don't need. I mean, I honestly, like, people talk about the debate. Has anybody not made up their mind yet? I'm not saying, I know everybody knows, everybody who watches the show knows who I'm going to vote for. It's not a secret, whatever. And that's, you disagree with me, I understand, but like, who are you if you're still on the fence? Like, I just don't understand how you cannot have your mind made up by now.
Yeah, like who needs to wait until the day of the election to vote at this point? I mean, 48 million people in America have voted, right? It seems like an outrageous number. I haven't verified what it was in 2016, but at this stage, for October 22nd, it feels like a lot. 48 million votes already confirmed in. What are you waiting for? I mean, in California, they made it very easy to vote early. Vote early. I mean, yeah, if you're going to vote, vote.
What is that? But like, Andy, what do you think the little piece of information that you're still not quite sure about is that will finally get somebody to go one direction or the other?
I mean, maybe like the classic Barbara Walters, if you were a tree, what type of tree would you be? I mean, something just really random.
If you had to eat a crayon, what color would it be? I can't figure that out.
I mean, I feel like there has been enough information at this point out there. This has been something of a politically consumed 4 years that we've all lived through. No matter what side of the spectrum you're on, we've all been collectively paying a lot of attention. Like this has not been a term, I think, that was heavily favored towards the politically casual, like the politically unaware,
the low engagement voter. This is cycle. I do think there's something, Pedro, to be said for a night like it feels very 2020 that your two options for viewership tonight were the debate or a football contest between the Eagles and the Giants. Like that feels like the shit show that we deserve as a nation right now.
Yeah.
So, did you guys see the Daniel Jones clip where he's just running and just falls down 80 yards in?
What's this?
Yeah,
Who's
Daniel
this
Jones, quarterback. We'll see if we can pull it up. Daniel Jones, the quarterback of the Giants, broke free, was in the clear for like an 85-yard, 90-yard touchdown, and just fell down. He just tripped and fell down.
That's relatable.
Like 80 yards into it.
I mean, it's a long way to run.
He's running hard. Whoa.
He is.
That's a fast man. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Did they score after that?
No, I don't know.
Well, I'd like to know that information. If they scored in like another down, it's like, okay, whatever.
No,
that's a long,
embarrassing.
That is a long way to run, though. I mean, in fairness to him, that's a long way to go.
Most Americans would fall over if they tried to run 80 yards.
Exactly. It's exhausting, man.
All right. So, Pedro, there's a lot obviously we want to get into with the series. There's a lot I actually want to get into with just how this season has been for you. But let's start with game 2. I don't quite understand it, but there was still, maybe just out of habit, some consternation among Dodgers fans at the way Dave Roberts and the Dodgers handled the bullpen. It's just the bullpen game in game 2. Was there any other option for them other than what they did?
No, that's a great question. No, there wasn't. Not in yesterday's game. There was an option. So everyone's criticized. A lot of people have criticized them for how they handled game 2, right? But those people, I guess, failed to realize is that all three of the starters that they've had outside of Kershaw and Buehler were all not on full rest. So the Dodgers had no fully rested starters to use yesterday. They just didn't. That none of them were on more than 2 days rest, which is half what you need as a starter in baseball normally. So they had no options. They could not use a guy. It's not, it couldn't be fair to any young man. Those guys are 23, 24, and 26, and you're going to ask them to throw 100 pitches on 2 days rest. That's no way to go through life. The decision the Dodgers had was in game 7 of the NLCS, in which, they had Gonsolin fully rested and they chose to open with Dustin May instead, use him for an inning, then go to Gonsolin, then pull him early and go to Urias. But it's hard to criticize them for that decision because, as you know, that decision got them to the World Series, right? So the point is to win the games. They won the game. They won game 7 of the NLCS, however finicky it was, they won it. And they're here now. And then as a result of that decision that they made, they didn't have the pitching freedom yesterday. So it is what it is.
Is there anything that you think maybe in hindsight, Dave Roberts could have done differently in terms of the order of the guys that he employed?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the number one issue is just having the guys pitch better in yesterday's game and in the previous game. And if you want to ask and you want to argue, like, is this method of using Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin the best method for their success? That's a reasonable question, and we don't know, right? They were really good in the regular season, 2.5 ERA between them, over 100-plus innings in the regular season, 7 ERA in the postseason in 16. That's not a good number, right? That doesn't look good at all. Well, we don't know. I can't say that Dustin May wouldn't have pitched poorly if he had been given a full start. It's hard to say. The Dodgers are in the World Series. They're tied.
Say Alex Wood. I'm just throwing him out there just to remind myself that he's on the team. But if say like Alex Wood had been used in that role, and then you use him to set up the other guys, like, I mean, you'll never know. But I mean, just in terms, because there's been a lot of talk about the way Gonsolin and May not just have been struggling of late, but the way they've actually been used. Like there's been some, like as you were just saying, that talk about whether or not they're being used to their strengths. And I don't know if coming in after Alex Wood would be any better for either one of them, but I was curious, something like that.
It generally looks better to fans when you follow Alex Wood. Zing.
It's a little harder in the right-handed delivery. Yeah, it's smoother. It's more velo. It's not as herky-jerky. That's fair. Wood pitched pretty well yesterday, though. I mean, if they used Alex Wood to start game 2, right, and he doesn't pitch well, they're going to be slammed. The Dodgers are going to be slammed for using a guy who didn't make a single successful start during the Major League regular season, right, and was injured for most of 2019. It's just that's a hard trigger to pull, in my opinion. Yesterday's game, they were quick on the trigger with both Gonsolin and May, quicker than I expected. Even I knew that they weren't going to go longer than 2 or so innings, but 6 batters on Gonsolin, 8 batters on May. That's real tight. And so that's somewhat surprising, but I think it might be setting them up to, they hope to probably use those guys. One of them maybe in game 4 in relief of Urias, and then I think ideally you'd set one of them up for a full length start in game 6.
So what your basic point of guys go pitch better, I think is the answer here. I mean, so much of this feels just like we're used to criticizing the Dodgers and their bullpen choices, and particularly Dave Roberts in October. Like that's it's the one thing that seems to have stuck to the 2020 sports calendar in LA, and so we're leaning into it. But the flip side is, like, if May goes out and pitches well, like what has happened to Dustin May that makes him less effective? Because, like, if you start going down the list of dudes that you can feel confident about, if May isn't pitching well, Gonsolin's not pitching well, I don't think anybody wants to see Joe Kelly do anything. You're starting to run out of dudes. So what's the deal with May? We'll start there.
What's the deal? I mean, he was really good during the regular season, doesn't strike people out, but throws really hard. Obviously has the 2-seamer that attracts people's attention in the GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call it. And he
GIFs, Pedro, GIFs.
Okay.
Again, the president declared it.
The former president.
The former president. Yeah. But I mean, the former president, 2 terms, declared this. And in the meantime, the current president has not weighed in one way or the other. as much as
probably has at some point. No.
Well,
I would imagine.
I don't think he's weighed in on that, if for no other reason than I'm not 100% sure he knows what a GIF or a GIF is, like the vocabulary of it. And I would say he's pretty obsessed with erasing everything from Obama's 2 terms as president. So if he hasn't weighed in on this,
he like
just to erase this from Obama, then I think even President Trump has acknowledged that it's GIF.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. No pressure, Pedro. But if you happen to be looking at the chat, a great many of your colleagues are watching and judging.
Who's this?
Presumably.
Oh, yeah?
I see Antonio Morales. I see it's like a section of like Romper Room or whatever it is, where like they look through a little glass. Alden, Sabrina Merchant, many high-powered media figures are watching your appearance tonight on the Late Night Happy Hour.
Yeah, she says,
no
the
pressure.
Person who created the acronym says GIF. Yeah, that's I remember that specific.
And
thing.
Sabrina was on Jeopardy, so she knows.
Well, but Sabrina just pointed that out. But as I told her in the chat, last time I checked, whoever that dude was who invented it and created the acronym, that guy was never president. So I think he's overruled.
That is true. Yeah.
Again, 2-term president.
My understanding is that is one of the more underrated powers of the executive branch, is you get to rename that during every term.
I can't quibble with it.
Joe Biden could call it a fluffernutter if he wants to in the next term. It's fine. It's that's the thing. Yeah, a fluffernutter is a sandwich, Pedro.
It's like peanut butter and marshmallow or something like that, right?
That is exactly right. It's peanut butter and marshmallow fluff. Get your mind out of the gutter.
It also just happens to be at craft services on a porn set a lot.
But, I mean, that's just aggressive word.
But it is still a sandwich. It's still a sandwich.
It is just
doesn't make it any less a sandwich.
Anywho, what is going on with Dustin May? What the hell is going on?
I mean, he hasn't been that bad. He had 2 good outings earlier on in the postseason. I mean, I just question whether, what he's given up essentially that has caused this concern is like 3 innings and 4 runs, right? And if he did that in 1 outing in the regular season, like, would that really be like talk of much, the subject of much conversation? Probably not. Do I think if he pitched it in game 6, if they give him, 90 pitches in game 6, do I think he'd be good? Probably. Yeah. I mean, I think yes. At the same time, if there's one reason glaring to me that they could be attributed to why he's not good, who hasn't been good this postseason, and by that I mean in the last 4 innings, it's that he hasn't been asked to do this before. This is new to him. He's pitching on 1 or 2 days rest. And this is a kid who, was a high schooler not long ago, really was a starter his entire life, has never relieved, excepting like a tiny amount of time last postseason, and that's about it. It's just, he's not a reliever. He's a starter. And so, sure, yeah, I mean, you could question, like, is that the right time? Is this the right time to provide guys learning experiences? Tony Gonsolin referred to it after game 2 as a learning experience for him. And, you're like, oh, is the World Series really when you want to give people learning experiences?
That feels more like an August thing.
But this is what they had, and most team, their pitching is, was still far better than the Braves, was still better than the Padres, was still better than whoever they faced in the first round, the Brewers, who had everyone hurt. The Rays are a great roster, but I still think the Dodgers likely have an advantage. There's no reason at this point, given how yesterday's game went, there's no reason to think that they can't pull this off in the next 5 games.
Do we sort of under it, like that is the trend now in baseball, where like you get to the playoffs and now. Especially, you get 3 innings out of your starters, 4 innings, 5 innings, whatever, then you start cobbling together these bullpen games, even though they're not meant to be that, like Blake Snell was great, and a no hitter into the 5th inning, and he didn't get out of the 5th. Like, the
Dodgers have a good lineup. Yeah. They work pitchers.
Yeah. The hooks that most managers have, I guess save game 1 with Cash's choices in game 1. It almost always favors the quick hook for the starter, obviously the multiple relievers and erring on the side of more arms rather than fewer. Are the Dodgers necessarily constructed that way? They obviously have a lot of arms, but they don't necessarily operate that way. At least not normally.
Yes, it's funny, like the people refer to the Tampa Bay Rays as like the team that created the opener and they're known for all these unconventional things. And this is actually, now that they have the pitchers, they do this. They're going to throw out this series as normal, like really they're going to be the most traditional pitching setup the Dodgers faced in the entire postseason. And I just find that, this is a team that 2 years ago is credited for creating the opener, right? But they really are. I mean, because they have Morton, because they have Snell, because they have, Glass now, because they have Yarbrough, who did pitch a little bit in relief. This is a normal setup. The Dodgers are doing this out of necessity this year. They don't have, now that David Price opted out in July, they decided that Ross Stripling wasn't, a better option than Gonsolin or May, and they traded him. And they decided not to trade for Lance Lynn, who, probably would have been a nice option. Yes, in game 2, as I've seen suggested plenty of times. He's also not, a tremendous pitcher and does not have the track record that you necessarily want to throw out in the postseason. But would he be better than 2 rookie pitchers pitching on short rest? Yeah, probably. That said, I still think, the Dodgers are favored to win the World Series, which is about as good as you can say.
I tweeted this out last night during the game. Last night was the first time I had thought about David Price since he opted out. Like, I mean, I was like, oh my God, like I had forgotten that David Price was at any point even considered somebody who could pitch for the Dodgers in the World Series. Like I'd just completely forgotten that he was even on the team. And I guess I don't know how much not having a true 4th starter is going to come back to bite him in the ass, but this was one of the nights where you really remembered they just don't have that guy. Like that option hasn't emerged. I mean, like if you're not just going to make May your 4th starter.
Right.
I mean, I had a friend last night who was upset about, he was upset initially.
He's always upset.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a Dodger fan, LA native, longtime Dodger fan. And he was upset initially when the Dodgers traded Ross Stripling, although I think that was in part, I'm not even joking because he loves the podcast so much, and he was going to miss having that Dodger insight. But as I pointed out to him, Stripling wasn't good with the Dodgers, and then he wasn't good with Toronto either. Like he has not been good this year.
No. And I guess one other point that should be brought up here is that, when the Dodgers prepared for this season, well, first of all, when they prepared for the season, they were not aware of coronavirus and the shutdown and all the shortened schedule, but they were also not aware until, the mid-September that the postseason was going to have a different structure than any other year, that there were not going to be any off days. And I think that cannot be overlooked as a factor for why they used Dustin May in relief to begin with in game 1 of the NLDS, right? They knew that they had to use 5 full starters And so one way they thought of doing that, instead, they wanted to have good relievers, and May and Gonsolin could be, high leverage guys they threw in, but they also needed to thread the needle essentially between having starters and relievers. And so when it got to 7 games, they were out of whack. These teams did not know until I think it was like September 20th or so that there were going to be no off days, which essentially I think altered the entire structure of the DS and CS, and really is still affecting teams to this day. I mean, at this point in the postseason.
So how does using that game the way they did in game 2, how does that now impact the rest of it? I mean, because it's Buehler tomorrow, and then Urias, and then Kershaw, and that's your 3. So and then a day off, or is the day off in between?
No, the day off is on Monday. Yeah, it's Friday, Monday. Saturday, Sunday.
So now that they've done that for game 2, and they have the 3 guys lined up, assuming nobody gets blown up in one of those 3 games, and that you get a reasonable amount of innings from all 3 of those guys, what happens now?
What happens is the Dodgers use either both plus Alex Wood to go in game 6, or they pick one and then use the other guy in relief over the weekend. They use either Gonsolin or May in maybe 2 relief outings on Friday and Sunday, let's say, for an inning, or even just a batter there if you want a fireman of sorts. And then you stick to one guy and in a potential game 6. That's what I would do. And I think they might, but they also might, I think they like the flexibility of not allowing teams to prepare for multiple starters. I think they like that. That was the initial genius behind the Rays' decision to go with the openers a couple of years ago, right? Is that it messes up teams' preparation. And if you can not allow the Rays to know who they're going to face, there's some advantage in that. I don't know. We could see, but we know May and Gonsolin are still going to have to pitch in this series, and they're going to have to pitch well. If they don't pitch well, the Dodgers aren't going to win, probably. And I think that's more important, really, than any situation that they pitch in. It's whether they pitch well or not.
So if they did come back with a single starter in game 6, it would be Buehler theoretically on 3 days rest.
No, it would be May or Gonsolin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Buehler's lined up
as a starter
on normal. Yeah. Buehler's going to be, if there's a game 7, it's going to be Buehler.
Yeah, that's already been set. So you're just looking at potentially one more patchwork.
Yeah, it's just game 6.
Yeah. And that's, I would imagine the Dodgers' hope is if they have to do that, it won't be like with them staving off elimination. It'll be, if worst thing comes to worst, this will be the game that determines whether or not we go to game 7. And, we'll take our chances with Walker Buehler.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, for example, if the Dodgers were behind 3-2 heading into game 6, they would bump up Walker, then figure out the rest later?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised. Buehler is not a short rest pitcher. The Dodgers usually use him on extra rest. Since he debuted in 2018, they prefer to give him an extra day. Plus, he's been dealing with blisters for damn near 2 months now. And so I'd be very surprised. I do not expect that to happen.
Here's a question on the chat from Chase. Thoughts on Morton and Dodgers' history with him in terms of heading into this game?
Yeah, he pitched well against them in the 2017 World Series. He's a very good pitcher. Did not have a great regular season this year, but it seems like it was really just randomness at play. His peripherals were great. Still struck out dudes. Still walked very few. Just had a high ERA. I'm not really sure why, but he's been great, obviously, in the postseason. It's a really remarkably good matchup for a Game 3 of a World Series between him and Buehler. 2 guys who have been really good in their careers. Obviously, Morton for longer, and 2 guys who've been great in the postseason. I believe they both have like 2.7 career ERAs in the postseason. So it sets up, it's a really tight matchup. I think it's probably the closest pitching matchup in this series.
I just like Charlie Morton because he kind of looks like a guy named Charlie Morton. Like if you met him on the street and he introduced himself, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
He's the sweetest guy in baseball, man. Yeah, he's the best. And he has a great nickname because he's a sinker baller, ground chuck, like the
I like
you make burgers out of. Yeah, it's great. Just great.
He's a sweet guy, except when he's using trash cans.
That's right.
He has apologized for that. Then the pitchers were not the ones, the culprits.
They knew. They were a part of the whole thing, Pedro. Come on.
Do you think the pitchers should be held as accountable as the hitters? I definitely do not.
I mean,
they benefited.
I mean, they
indirectly.
But it's all part of a chain, though. I mean, the pitchers benefit from, what the hitters.
So you're saying it's the same? There's no distinction.
They could have said something. They knew.
They could have, sure. Yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely, they could have.
I mean, do I care more because it's the cheat and lying Astros and it hurt the Dodgers? Yeah. I mean, if they'd hurt the Yankees, would I be this upset? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, how their hitters perform affects the way they have to pitch. The tightness of it.
There's no debating that it helped them. It definitely helped.
I mean,
them.
Stop propping up Charlie Morton. All right,
just because he's a nice guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a sweetheart.
Charlie's a sweetheart.
Well, you know what?
He's not. Andy, before we get too far away from it, because it's important, you have to mention it because it sets up what's coming later in the show. This whole dog cat Star Wars thing that I've got planned makes no sense unless you talk about Tony Gonsolin and the cat thing, because I have a game for later in the show. But again, it needs context. So go ahead.
Right. So Tony Gonsolin, it's one of the things that's come out in terms of playoff stories. I personally did not know. He's like a cat freak. He's like the equivalent of a crazy cat lady. Like he comes in apparently to every single game wearing some type of cat
like
shirt.
A cat t-shirt?
Only when it's on Saturdays, yeah.
Only on Catterday?
Catterdays, yeah.
Yes, it is Catterday. Saturdays are Catterday. My wife loves Catterday. And he is an absolute cat freak. He also, the last 3 or 4 games, has not pitched well. And it led to Brian and I debating off air yesterday whether or not Tony Gonsolin can or cannot be trusted as a cat guy. Like, Brian doesn't trust a man who's a cat guy. I
don't trust cat people. It's not a man-woman thing. If I have to choose between a dog person to pitch a critical game 2 or a game 5 or a game 7 or a cat person to pitch I'm picking the dog person. I trust that person more than I do the cat person.
See, now I think that is, as somebody who owns both a dog and a cat and loves them equally, I think that is slanderous cat bullshit, what you're doing right now. I think you're making broad generalizations and stereotypes, and God knows we live in a world where enough people are othered as it is. We don't need to start seeing the cat people thrown around like that. But I guess
you trust more.
The question we have for you, Pedro, is do you think it matters more for a pitcher in terms of their trustworthiness, whether or not they are a dog or a cat person? And then are you basing this on any evidence that you have from this particular pitching roster? Do you know how many of them are dog and or cat people?
I know a little bit about the dog cat preferences. It's hard for me to remember right now. So I can speak to this quite a bit. So a couple years ago, when Tony Gonsolin first went to spring training with the Dodgers, in like the 3rd day of spring training, I introduced myself to him because I'd heard he had broken out the year before. And I was just making conversation. It was the earliest parts of spring training, the most relaxed days you could possibly have. And I just went up to him and we were essentially just chatting. And I was like, what is there to know about you? And he's like, I like cats. And I was like, oh, okay.
He opened with that? Like,
that was his line when I said, what should I know about you?
Tony Gonsolin wants to make sure Pedro Mora, who covers the team, knows about him. It's like, hey, I like cats.
I can't tell you how delightful this conversation was. It was the star of my spring training for me. I wrote a story just about how much he loved cats in February of 2019. And then everyone in the comments just said, wow, this is too much cat content. I thought this was a sports website. And I was like, okay, fine. I won't write about the cats anymore. But he had some tremendous quotes in here. Let me find it. The opening line. Please do. The opening line is just his. Oh my God! It was a fave for me. He has a line where he says, so the headline. Shout out to Joe Lago. Dodgers believe pitching prospect Tony Gonsolin is really the cat's meow. So he will get to know his teammates.
Disturbance in the force.
Yeah, Bill is going to be on this chat in seconds. He will get to know his teammates. He will share some of his interests, one of which is cats, and they will ask him one question: why don't you like dogs? I like dogs, he will explain. I just like cats a little more. His affection is attracting attention this spring, and then he says, if people notice me because of cats, they're still noticing me. And he just kept going on with this. He explained the very differences, like the why he likes to pet them more than dogs. He likes their independence more than dogs. I thought, essentially anything that someone is passionate about and they have actual explanations for why, I'm cool with. I don't like cats at all. I'm allergic to cats. I have no interest in ever having a cat in my life, but I like the fact that he likes cats.
I have a question. Who are these people that are so intense about what's happening in spring training that they can't take like an hour, or pause for like 30 seconds and be like, cat versus dogs. Like, it's spring training, man. Like, settle down. Enjoy.
If you've ever covered spring training, you're just searching for anything. Like this is a delightful story that you managed to stumble into. But the truth is, like by week 3 of spring training, you're just like, I'll write about anything.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think the split is in the early voting between who do you trust more, a dog person or a cat person?
Probably 95-5 dog.
You're pretty close. Pedro, what do you think?
It's I guess if he's pretty close, I'll go 75-25.
No, it's 90-10. 90-10.
What's wrong with cat people? I'm not aware.
They're not trustworthy.
On what basis? Like
because cats are shifty. Like dog. Like if you like. I just I mean I respect the cat, but they can kind of take your leave.
I feel like cats get a bad rep a bad rap in this way, and a bad rep for that matter. In that, for some reason, if somebody has like 10 dogs, like everyone wants to see their Instagram, and like everyone thinks, oh, that person, oh, look at them with their doggos, that person rocks. You get 10 cats, you're crazy. You're considered like a crazy cat person if you have 10 cats. But 10 dogs, nobody bats an eyelash. They think it's adorable. Both should be considered equally crazy.
If you have 10 snakes, you're Dwight Howard.
Yeah, well, no, that's not enough. He has way more than 10 snakes.
What?
Dwight Howard.
How many does he have?
I don't know.
Let me text Ben. He'll know.
Dwight has a ton of snakes. Like there was one time after a game this season where he just broke down all their names. Like he's like a snake aficionado. My friend didn't want a cat. His wife did. They compromised and got a cat to get from NYC says. But I feel like cats I think they get a bad rep for being more aloof than they actually are. Like cats can be very affectionate. They're just not desperate for it the way dogs are. And again, I love dogs. I have a dog. I love dogs. I grew up with dogs.
says 9+. Dwight has at least 9 snakes.
Do you know?
Now I will say this: I trust the cat people more than I have 15 snakes in my house people. That's too many reptiles.
Yeah, that's getting really close to serial killer material. But Pedro, do you have any sense of whether or not anybody else on this team is a dog or a cat person?
So yeah, I asked some dudes back then, but I feel like so much has happened. I remember that Gavin Lux is also a cat person. Gavin Lux likes cats. Yeah, that's as far as I can remember. There's somebody who hated them on the team, but it's not coming to mind right now. It might be in the story. I don't know. If you want to know somebody like out there, just ask me later on, or I can just whenever things are normal again, I'll just ask the players like, hey, what's that again?
Now, This though led to another question that I don't know if Brian knows I was mulling over, but I had been, like the idea of whether you would trust a dog person or a cat person on the mound in a big game. Who would you trust though more to pitch a good game in the World Series between a dog or a cat?
The animals?
Yes, the actual animal. It's absolutely a cat.
I'm not a pet expert at all, but it does seem like cats are calmer, right?
Yeah.
So,
well,
smarter.
They're smarter.
And they're wily.
Is that true?
They're more athletic. Their paws are better set to grip a ball. Like if you have to look at like a dog's paw versus a cat's paw is way more functional. Dogs are going to be more obedient in terms of what the catcher's calling. Like a dog won't shake off a pitch or anything like that. Dog's going to follow a game plan to just the nth degree. The dog is going to be much more, I think, emotionally invested in trying to be a great teammate. Like the cat, you might think is a little bit more disconnected to what's going on. But they're both easily rattled too, by the way. A dog and a cat, it's pretty easy to freak out either one of them. But I feel like
it's pretty easy to freak out humans too, right?
Yes, it is.
But I benefit from not having so many fans in the stadium.
I feel like if you had to go with one or the other, it'd be a cat, and it's not that difficult a choice.
It is.
Can't quibble with it.
Yeah. There's a certain irony to that you wouldn't want the cat person to be on the mound, but you would want the cat itself.
Weigh in the chat, people, if you have any thoughts on whether or not.
And again, this is the type of World Series analysis people come to this show for. I had other questions.
Believe it or not, Pedro, we did bring you on to talk about more than just this.
I can talk about pets, man.
What do you look at in terms of Game 2? Well, beyond the hodgepodge pitching rotation thing, which we already discussed earlier, and that it had a lot of controversies. The Dodgers weren't necessarily expected to sweep this thing, I think, by anybody realistic. But was there anything from Game 2 that you found alarming, or anything that you look at and say, okay, here's an area that requires some correction, or where they may have gotten away from what was really helping them?
No, I think other than the pitching, it went okay. They didn't. They struck out a lot. I guess that's probably the biggest thing. They struck out a lot, 15 times. I believe it tied a World Series record for the franchise that they set in that 18-inning game. So they had as many strikeouts yesterday as they had in that 18-inning game against the Red Sox a couple years ago. So that's not ideal. But they were facing a guy who, is a Cy Young Award winner, Blake Snell, and had, I think, his peak stuff in yesterday's game. So it's hard for me to criticize him too much for that. Pitching wise, they were able, even given the mini disaster that unfolded, they were able to avoid using Urias, who was available and would have pitched had the game been tight. And they were able to avoid using Brusdar Graterol, Kenley Jansen, Blake Trinan. They're 3 highest leverage relievers at this point. So all 3 of those guys, essentially, if the Dodgers choose to, could probably pitch in all 3 of the games this weekend if they really wanted to. Graterol has not been used in that way before, but Trinan is a good bet. If these games are close, Blake Trinan is going to come in big spots every night. Probably Jansen at least 2 of those nights too, because he's been good, after the earlier postseason stumbles. So in some ways, it was good.
Is the turnaround for Jansen just as simple as, like, should somebody have called Rick Honeycutt like a couple days earlier? I mean, like, what the hell?
So he certainly worked with Honeycutt before. I couldn't speak to how often this year, for example, he has, but with his body, the delivery has come out of sync. Just in the years that I've been around the team steadily since 2017 started, he's been since 2018 started. He's been around. He's been probably 12 different times. His delivery has gone out of sync. I mean, it happens all the time. That's just how his body is. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He is not able to constantly have his arm and his upper body and his lower body in synchronization. So it's just part of the deal with him. I think Honeycutt's worked with him plenty of times, and maybe even it could have happened in September. I'm not quite sure, but the video that they sent there obviously helped, and so it seems like his stuff is better now. It certainly seems that way.
Yeah, I heard you talking on the Athletics daily podcast, and you were talking about how for a while Kenley Jansen was resisting changing up his pitches, his selection, going to other stuff. He basically was just only going with that cutter. And after a while, especially when it wasn't quite as effective, batters were figuring it out. How has that evolution been playing out, if at all, in terms of being more flexible as a pitcher?
He's definitely more flexible now than he was, in 18. 18 was probably the prime example of when he really started to, he was really refusing. His stuff was in decline, and he was refusing to throw other things. So it hurt him consistently, time and time again. This year, if you look at it, the cutter, he used it, I want to say about 20% less than he had last year, maybe 30%, some significant amount, and worked in the fastball that plays off of it and the slider. So it's not, at this point, the issue is not his unwillingness to do new things. It has really, at this point, nothing to do with that. He's done it as much as the Dodgers have asked. After 18, he's really been exploring that more and more. It's just a matter of, the reason he was as good as he was because his cutter had this preternatural cut to it that made it almost impossible to hit for power. And when when the cutter's 3 miles an hour down and only moving half as much, that just doesn't, that no longer is true. And so that takes away the dominant, the 7 years of crazy success that he had.
How much longer is he under contract with the Dodgers?
Through next year.
Do you think he'll be the closer next year?
Possible. It sort of depends which version of him they get. Graterol would make a lot of sense as a future closer if the Dodgers don't use him in the rotation. But Jansen, maybe. I mean, he's probably going to go into spring training with that job, I would guess. Unless there's some sort of disaster here in the next 5 games. But yeah, he's going to close games next year, you would think. I mean, he still had a pretty good season this year, right? It wasn't that bad.
The reason I ask is just because this has been a persistent storyline for like 3 years. Like the idea of, will Kenley Jansen stay in this role? Like this has been a discussion point for a while. So I'm just curious in terms of, really how long it stays that way. Because he really, on balance, his career with the Dodgers as a closer has been fantastic.
Oh, yeah, there's You can't make an argument against that. Yep.
No, but it's. I think it's just. I mean, I'm talking to people who. I mean, I didn't see all 60 of the regular season games, but the numbers were certainly very good. But I think there's just a feeling that the margin for error for him is so much smaller than it used to be. There are more base runners. It's like, so even if he gets out of an inning and it's 0 runs on the scoreboard, it was 0 runs but 2 base runners, and the whip goes up and all that kind of stuff. Would a different team that isn't quite as dominant as the Dodgers get away from that closer role a little bit more anyway and use their best reliever at the highest leverage moments? I mean, the fact that the Dodgers are so good kind of allows them to keep that kind of classic closer because they're ahead in so many games.
Yeah, you could say that, and there's also the element of a lot. In a good bit of games, the ninth inning of a safe situation is not the highest leverage situation,
right?
So, I think as you were alluding to, so it doesn't really harm you as much as people might think. That said, in the playoffs, that's a new animal, right? You can't any blown saves is essentially swing series. So he's not been bad. I think I would not be surprised if he was the closer next year. If there's a 162 game season in 2021, I would probably set the over under on Jansen saves, like something in the 20s. I think he might be, he might close games for them next year. Yes.
So if everything goes well, let's say, just 3, 4, 5 and, into 6, whatever. If Dave Roberts draws this thing up the way he wants to, which relievers do we see between now and the end of this series? And more specifically, who don't we see?
You don't see Kelly. You don't see Floro. Those are the 2 lowest leverage guys, probably. Floro first. Who they like in certain spots depends less on the inning and more on who's up. Jansen has not faced the opposition's best hitter at all. Tatis he didn't face, Yelich he didn't face, Acuna or Freeman he didn't face. They avoid using him with guys who can punish. I think 93 mile an hour stuff. So the Dodgers have steadfastly avoided that altogether. I think the last time he faced someone like that was like September 16th in San Diego. So Treinen is the guy in those situations, or Gratterall, depending on how badly you could use a strikeout, or, they're both sort of similar pitchers in the ground balling tendencies. But Gratterall and Treinen, I think, are the number 2 guy, the top 2 probably. And with Jansen, I mean, the way he looked in the last round, I can't say that he's not the best guy. So I don't know, but they're up there. Victor Gonzalez, the lefty that Dave Roberts went to twice in the first 2 games of the series, is a prime option for them. They really like his stuff and the way he's pitched. He although he was nervous in game 1, which Roberts admitted to, but to be expected to some degree for a young man making his World Series debut. Outside of that, Kolarek is. Oh, I should have mentioned Kolarek with the Kelly and Floro bunch. They have not used Kolarek in quite a bit of time. He's been in low leverage when he has, and he was not good when he was pitching. So it doesn't seem like he's
Lincoln.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's going to be the choice for a high leverage spot. Although he was really good during the regular season.
It's strange because Kolarek, based on how they, I was going to say, based on how they used him before, seemed like one of the guys. If you had to make a list of Major League Baseball players who would suffer most with the 3-batter rule, you would have put Kolarek on it. But he was good, so I mean, I guess he. Yeah,
one thing it's funny you mentioned that. Well, somebody asked me like near the end of the season, like what I thought of the 3-batter minimum, and I said like, oh, it didn't really make much of a difference this year because it really didn't in the Dodgers regular season. But I totally underestimated the impact it would have on the postseason.
Yeah,
it seems to be a factor
in
essentially every game. Like it's a huge aspect of it. I didn't realize that because it didn't impact the way they used Kolarek in the regular season, like really at all. There's maybe 2 situations where it even played a role. But yeah, I think Kolarek has not gotten the use, and you can't bring him in for one lefty spot. You just can't. It just doesn't necessarily make sense with the way he's pitched.
All right. So now if the Dodgers win game 3 with Walker Buehler, win game 4 with Julio Urias, you've got this situation where Clayton Kershaw could be on the mound with the opportunity to potentially close out the World Series that has not just eluded the Dodgers for going on 32 years, but has eluded Clayton Kershaw's career. And it's the one thing he still doesn't have, and the one thing that is still being held over him. And I know when he won game 1 and he pitched really, really well in game 1, I was rooting so hard for the Dodgers to sweep just so there wouldn't be this potential opportunity for everything to be on Kershaw. And to be fair, he's actually pitched pretty well in the playoffs, but there's still that sixth inning thing. There's still the history that makes Kershaw, that I should say, that makes fans nervous with Kershaw. It's a thing that Kershaw has admitted is hanging over him. I mean, he's aware of this narrative, and there is a part of me both excited.
It's like reality. It's a thing.
Right.
It's a real thing.
Sure. Narrative is just an overused word by everybody, including me. But I am excited at the prospect for Kershaw, like the potential opportunity for him, and also terrified on his behalf. Like, because I don't want to see him continuing to suffer through this. And you just know it could be there.
That's sports, man, right? If you have the possibility to win it all, you also have the possibility to come up short and be like he was after last postseason's failure, where he said everything that people say about me is true, but after that he said, but I'm still going to come back here and be trying the same way I've been trying for the last 12 years of my career. And I think if he fails again, if the Dodgers lose the World Series with him on the mound this year, I think he'll be back next year pitching well again, and they might have another chance again next year to it. I mean, like, this is the man he is. Like, he is going to push as hard as he possibly can, at times to his own detriment, to win the World Series. And I think, eventually, I think they're going to do it. I think they will.
I think, and this is, I think, gets to some of what has hurt Kershaw with the way Roberts has tended to one batter too long here, whatever it might be. Like, I want him to have that opportunity, like in a 2-2 series, to go out and throw 7 scoreless or something like that. But like Andy said, it's like the flip side of that is if he gets blown up, then it's a bit like they got him off the hook. I mean, I think that's one of the best aspects of the Braves series. Is not only was it an epic comeback and an incredible Game 7, is they kind of very quietly got Kershaw off the hook. He comes back and pitches Game 1, and like you talk about, this is sports. This is kind of how these things get built. He pitched really well early in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden it didn't matter, and he was the guy who screwed it up. You go back through almost any playoff series. Anyway, Anthony Davis rims out that shot against Portland. Like all of these moments that you forget about, because ultimately what people remember is the last round before anybody gets the championship. I don't know. It feels sort of cosmic to me that like it feels like the first time the Dodgers actually got Kershaw off the hook. Usually it's Kershaw screws up and they lose the entire series and everyone spends the winter yelling at him. This time it didn't happen that way. There's no question there. That's just
I think, if it never happens, the essential question will always be, what about 2017? What about the time that they had no swings and misses against this stuff the entire game, against the slider? And yeah, I mean, he probably, the Dodgers probably deserve to win that World Series based on the way that they played. They were really good in 2017. The Astros were too, but the Astros were cheating. And Kershaw had, in Game 1, or the first time he pitched in the 2017 World Series, he was dominant, right? He pitched really well. People forget that, I think, because it was at home, and then they got to Minute Maid Park, and then they beat down the Dodgers pitching. But he's been, he's had plenty of good starts. I think maybe more than people realize. He's also had some bad ones, absolutely. But he's been, a solid postseason starter, an average to above average postseason starter. And, I think the Dodgers absolutely trust him, in Game 5. They'd be happy to have him. And I think he's a pretty good option. I mean, he's a pretty good option. He's comparable to Tyler Glasnow at this point in their careers, maybe better. The Dodgers are not going to be disadvantaged by any means. If it gets to a Game 5, if it's 2-2, or if they can clinch it there, and it's Kershaw versus Glasnow, that's a good matchup for them. Clayton Kershaw is still a good pitcher.
Look, I would like to see this end. Like I would just like, he's had such a great career, and you want to talk about somebody who really cares about success and really cares about their craft. It's this guy. And this one thing has been hanging over him, and obviously he plays a role in it, and he has to own the times where he didn't come through. But as you talked about, Pedro, there's also been success. And either way, it's just been too great of a career to have this one thing over it. And it would, if nothing else, I just want him to pitch really well in Game 5. So if for whatever reason the Dodgers don't win, this doesn't end up a referendum on him. Because I also feel like if he pitched average, just didn't hold the team back and they won, this would all go away. Like he just needs to not get in the way of winning.
You think it will all go away?
Yeah, I do.
If they don't win? No.
If they win.
No. If they won a World Series.
I'm not under the impression that it's all going to go away, because then people are going to say, fans of other teams and whatnot are going to say next year, well, it was a shortened season. It was. I certainly don't think it's going to go away in any meaningful.
Even
fashion.
If they win?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't. If they win, I do not expect it's going to go away. No.
This poor dude.
He's certainly not poor.
Well, okay. This financially secure, downtrodden spiritually man. I don't know the best way to put it, because you are correct.
He's rich as all get out.
Really quick before we get to the game, Pedro, do you still have your pandemic hair?
Yeah.
May we see it?
Yeah, sure.
Look at this. Look at this.
Look at that. Nice.
That is amazing. And the reason I wanted to ask about this is there was something I noticed, during this period of Cody Bellinger looks high meme era, and like everybody talking about Stony Cody Bellinger. Look what I noticed. Look at this. Look at this. It's uncanny. Look at that. Come on now. I mean, you two could be twins.
Yeah. Yes. The same sativa.
Yes. Look at this. You're both deep in what I have to imagine are very profound thoughts. I mean, look at this. This is from Pedro's last appearance on the Late Night Happy Hour at the beginning of pandemic hair.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Man, that was when I thought my hair was long.
Yeah. This is true. The kid from NYC says AK and BK looking at Pedro's hair with pure envy and evil thoughts. That is 100% correct.
And Bellinger's, for that matter. I don't like either one of you people.
I mean, look at that. That is just uncanny, Pedro.
It's funny. So I've learned, some different techniques. I'd never gone in my life more than a month without getting a haircut. So I learned like a tie thing that you can put on. And then I learned the headbands, which I'd never used before, but have liked a lot. And both of those things I've seen co-opted by the Dodgers. Obviously, they did not get it from me. They have not seen me. But it's just funny to see the same sort of styles. I tie the hair and get it into like a little pineapple flower kind of thing. And Clayton Kershaw has rocked the same look in his Zoom press conferences. It's every man out there with the hair who has not gotten a haircut is dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, no, Sabrina, we weren't making that up. You guys did not oversell Pedro's hair when you called it majestic. We've had some spectacular hair on the Late Night Happy Hour. We have to import it. Neither one of us can do this ourselves. We have to bring it. Paolo Uggetti from The Ringer has really great hair.
Jovan
has great hair.
Steve Mason.
I have to say, among the silver-haired set, Steve Mason, when we had him on, really great head of hair.
Beto Duran,
we do what we can.
We didn't include him in the original poll. We did a poll, Pedro, about best hair of any Late Night Happy Hour guest, and unfortunately, we feel like you got robbed due to recency bias or lack thereof.
I was in the poll.
You were in the poll.
I lost.
You got
yes,
smoked.
You did to Paolo.
Oh wow!
You got smoked. You came in a very distant fourth, but I feel like
how many votes did I get?
I don't know. We have to go back and look.
Can I see the poll? I'd like to know.
This was like.
Let me see if I can find this. I'll see if I can find it.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it.
Let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this poll.
Yeah, I voted Pedro.
I got to do a Twitter search. We stuck up for you. We actually felt like you were getting kind of screwed, and it really, I guess, was our fault.
Did you rig and then put some votes?
No. We told people
we just
that
put
actually
people with good hair. John Gonzalez has nice hair.
John Gonzalez does have nice hair. We actually told people that they were
not. Meme is just you looking out like into space, just thinking of people who have good hair. I like that. Yeah,
that's just that. I call that a Tuesday. I mean, that's just that's just how I spend my time.
Yeah, we informed the voters that they were screwing you over. We're like, we're not saying Pedro has to win.
No, but you deserve more
Exactly.
He deserved a better showing. It wasn't
Right.
fair.
He's not getting enough love in this poll. And again, you were by far I found it.
I was last.
You were last. Johan Buha won with 34.3%, followed by Steve Mason, 29.7%, Paolo Ojedi, 29.5%, and then Pedro Morris, 6.6%. Which it's kind of bullshit, Pedro. I got to be honest. It is.
It's okay.
I mean,
I would call it a popularity contest, but I'm not sure that would make you feel better.
So I haven't seen Jovan's hair on this, but I can speak to. He definitely does more to it than I do. So I can. He earns it. I don't. Yeah, but, I have not.
Can he
do
out, this?
No. I lost that headband too. Dang. Yeah, that was really a long time ago. I wish I had that one.
It really is.
Yeah. Dang.
All right. You ready?
Sure. For what?
Game. It's a game that that's why we had to do all this whole Gonsolin thing. Otherwise, this game would have no context. This is a game called Dog, Cat, or Star Wars Character. So, or thing from the Star Wars universe, basically, is what this is. So, I'm going to give each one of you a name of something, and you have to tell me whether it is a dog breed, a cat breed, or something that comes from the Star Wars universe. So, you don't have to shout it out like there's no name as your buzzer or anything like that. So, Pedro and Andy. And so, we will start, if everybody's ready, with the following. Devin Rex. Is Devin Rex a kind of cat, a kind of dog, or something from the Star Wars universe? Andy.
I'm going to say that's a dog.
Pedro.
Can I get a spelling? On Rex?
R-E-X.
Devin, D-E-V-I-N?
This isn't the fucking spelling bee, Pedro.
No,
I don't need it. I'm not going to use it in a sentence or tell you the origin.
I'll go Star Wars. Yeah.
It is a cat. You're both wrong.
Huh.
A Devin Rex is a kind of cat.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. That sounds made up.
No.
Never heard of that before.
Poplu. What is a Poplu? Is a Poplu a cat, a dog, or something from the Star Wars universe? Pedro, you go first this time.
Dog.
Andy.
I'm going to say that is a Star Wars thing.
That is correct. It is a Star Wars character.
Yes!
Poplu was the Ewok who in Return of the Jedi stole the speeder bike from the Imperial Scout Trooper to distract them from the Rebel mission. So not just an Ewok, but a critical Ewok. So good for him. Dandy Dinmot. Dandy Dinmot. Is that a dog, a cat, or something from the Star Wars universe? Andy. A Dandy Dinmot. Is that a dog, a cat, or a something from the Star Wars universe?
I am going to say that is a cat.
Pedro.
Dog.
That is a dog. Pedro equals things up. Here we go. Now we're going. What is a Bosk? Is a Bosk a kind of cat, a kind of dog, or something from the Star Wars universe?
I gotta go.
Yep.
Bosk.
I gotta go.
What is a Bosk? A cat, a dog, or something from the Star Wars universe?
Cat.
Andy?
I'm also going to say it's a cat.
It is a thing from the Star Wars universe. Andy, you know Bosk. He looks like this guy. Let's see if I can bring him up here. Do you see him?
I don't.
No.
Well,
don't see him either. It wasn't that important. I don't know what a Bosk is. I have no idea.
A Bosk is one of the bounty hunters, one of the 6 bounty hunters that was dispatched across the universe by Darth Vader to find the Millennium Falcon. In Empire Strikes Back. He's the guy who looks like sort of like the lizard fella with the claws and whatever. It doesn't say he appears in a bunch of movies. So a Bosk is a Star Wars character. This game is going swimmingly.
Just want to make sure it's clear. Brian came up with this game.
Sometimes you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
In your head, this game felt less convoluted, didn't it?
I don't think it's convoluted. I just don't know anything about Star Wars, so I'm going to take a big L. Yeah.
It's okay. Kai Leo. Is that a dog, a cat, or a Star Wars character?
Who's going? Me, Andy.
It doesn't matter.
I'll go dog.
Andy?
I'm going to say that's a cat, like Leo, like a lion.
It is a dog. Pedro takes a 2-1 lead.
Ooh,
really moving on now. Shiba Inu.
I've heard that.
Inu. Andy.
I've heard of that before.
Shiba
that is a dog.
Inu.
It's a dog.
Yeah, I think I don't know very many cat species, so it must be a dog. Yeah, has
You
to
are
be a dog.
both correct. It is a dog species. Congratulations. Ponda Baba. What is a Ponda Baba?
I'm going to go
Is it
Star
a dog,
Wars.
a cat, or a Star Wars character?
I'll go Star Wars on
That
that.
has to be a Star Wars character.
A Ponda Baba is, in fact, a Star Wars character. He's the Aqualish mercenary who, in A New Hope, attacks Luke Skywalker in the Mos Eisley Cantina and then gets his arm chopped off by Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Really?
Oh, wow.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
That's what
That
the
guy.
species is. Interesting.
That fellow's name was Ponda Baba. All right. 7 more. Just kidding. Cow Money. Cow Money. Is that a cat, a dog, or a Star Wars character? Or thing?
I'm gonna say that is a cat.
Pedro?
Yeah, cat.
It is a cat. Very
I've
good.
never heard of it. I just guessed.
Yeah.
There hadn't been a cat in a while. That was my rationale.
All right, here we go. This last one, Andy, lucky for you, is worth 11. This is the final question as I mercifully put this game to bed. we are cutting tonight's game segment slightly short. Toro
You never know till you
Calican.
try.
What is a Toro Calican? Is a Toro Calican a dog, a cat, or a Star Wars character?
I got cat on that.
Andy.
I am going to say that is a dog.
Oh, Andy, that is a shame. You really should have gone with Star Wars character because Toro Calican was the bounty hunter, briefly worked with the Mandalorian to track down an assassin, Fennec Shand, on Tatooine before turning him in and attempting to claim the bounty on his head, leading to the Mandalorian killing him.
I remember
you
that.
said those words very fast. That was impressive.
Well, I had them written down.
I remember them. I remember that happening. I don't recall them
I
identifying
haven't
what
seen
that.
the Mandalorian.
I have
That was-
seen the Mandalorian.
that was a trick
Well-
question with the Calican, because
It
as soon
sounded
as I heard
kind of
that, I thought
cat-like, didn't
cat,
it?
yeah.
I held
I
that
heard-
to the
I was
end.
like, whoa. Yeah.
It's a breed of calico cat.
Well, that was terrible.
We got like collectively 4 right between us.
Yeah, I mean, I will say,
Yeah.
we had Mirren Fader on the other night. We played a game of when did this word first appear in the dictionary, which went way better than this one.
That
was
game
fun.
did go well. I will.
That
give
was
you
a good
credit.
game.
That game went.
This
very
game
well.
sucked. This was a bad game.
Well, they can't all be winners.
Every once in a while, you come up with a game and it just doesn't work.
What before we let you go, Pedro? What if you had to pick one thing that you think could swing this thing in either direction for the Dodgers, like sort of the X factor player, X factor element? What do you think it would be?
It's probably getting a good performance out of Gonsolin or May. If one of those two guys pitches well in Game 6, it's hard for the Dodgers to lose this series. They need a good outing, a very good outing out of one of the two. I think there's a reason to expect that between Buehler, Kershaw, and Urias, you're going to get 2 or 3 really good starts. But beyond that, there's some uncertainty there. So
That's
I think
real.
that-
That's really interesting, just in the sense that I don't think that is something that a lot of people, or at least I, had been thinking about heading into this. It would not have occurred to me before this thing began that the performances of those two, either individually or collectively, would have been that big of a deal. That's really interesting to me.
It's pitching is the Rays pitching is their strength, and so they could lose. I think it's conceivable the Dodgers could lose the series based on that. Yeah, I still think if I had to bet, if you asked me to, I would say the Dodgers are at this point more likely. The first 2 games have gone pretty well for them. They faced the Rays' 2 best relievers in Game 2. They did well against them. They have all their pitching lined up. It should be okay. It should be okay.
Look, they had their worst option in game 2, and they still had an opportunity to win. I mean, it's not like they got crushed in that game.
No, they were, very much within arm's reach.
Yeah. I'm still lamenting the game.
I was going to say you're on tilt at this point.
I was pulled out of the whole thing. I really shouldn't. I should be Alex Wooded at this point. Just sent to the back of the bullpen.
Yeah, Pedro,
try not to use them for the rest of the series.
If I call you to host the rest of these shows as the Dodgers are going on, I hope you'll oblige, because Brian maybe now be permanently the back of the rotation.
I do think we're going to bounce back tomorrow. We have Lindsey Fulton and Greg Bergman coming on after game 3, and we will play a game of Lindsey or Lindsey.
Yes,
and so I think that's
I've created this game. This game is good.
What's the circumstance?
Let's not get all like cocky, like, because Andy created the game. Andy's games are always nails. Some of your games suck.
But
this one I have confidence because this sounds like fun.
I think this game is good. Basically, the premise is Lindsey can be a name spelled a bunch of different ways, and sometimes that can create confusion. So there's going to be a bunch of different players with the name, or people, humans, I should say, humans with the name Lindsey as their first name, last name, whatever. There's going to be questions about those people, and then there is a bonus question or bonus opportunity of sorts that I'm not going to reveal, but that exists. It's a game called Lindsey or Lindsey. I'm very confident in this game. I think it's going to be very good. So I did not mean that as a slam on Brian's game. I don't have to say anything to slam the game.
It was just a bad one.
But I think
didn't work.
Pedro, if you want to tune in tomorrow night, I think you're going to find Lindsey or Lindsey a rousing game.
Is Davenport going to be on there?
Lindsey Davenport is a clue. Lindsey Davenport is a clue.
Tennis.
No, it's not that simple. But Lindsey Davenport is involved. This is great. From Craig Minami. How many bounty hunters are named Lindsey? We'll see. Already know Lohan will get a name drop somehow. You are correct.
Strong final 13 minutes of tonight's late night happy hour. Pedro, you can't get this time back, but we appreciate you giving it to us. Everything good? You know, it's got you a little weird working, doing the World Series from where you are, but
it's extremely bizarre. Yeah, but it's I'm safe at home. Can't complain.
With spectacular hair. Yes, we know.
It's if it's any consolation, it's really more of a chore to deal with these days.
It's not.
No, that's not a consolation, and frankly, that feels like a humble brag.
It's not. I mean, just imagine I have to be wearing something at all times in order to do it in the kitchen.
It's a rich person walking around going, guys, it's not that. It's hard because I keep tripping all over these bags of money that are lying around my house.
Let me tell you something.
It's much more of a burden than you think.
You have no idea. It is surprisingly expensive to maintain a Ferrari. Like, you have no idea what we go through as exceptionally wealthy people. Like, the gas tank for a Lamborghini, shockingly big. And, you have to go super. So that's the first world problem. That
these cars don't detail themselves, Pedro.
Okay, I get it.
No, we're both just really jealous and petty and bitter.
Yeah.
That's good hair. I used to have hair like that.
It'll be gone for me too.
Ball over there and it needs me.
All right, we'll let you go.
Tomorrow night, Greg Bergman and Lindsey Fulton from 710 ESPN in LA. Monday, JP Hornster. We're like leaning into baseball hard here because we did basketball, and then after that it's just like no sports. We got NFL and food and pop culture and stuff. So Pedro, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, just let me know.
Okay,
cool, awesome, man. Thank you.
See everybody tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you.